Morning, everybody. It's 8:30. We'll call this morning's meeting to order. And our first item is the approval of the agenda.
So move.
Second the motion.
We have a motion by Commissioner Gross, second by Commissioner Mojo. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. Motion carried. Citizens to be heard. Any online citizens, Steve?
No, Mr. Chair, there's not.
All right. Okay, we will move on then to the approval of the bills and vouchers.
Move to approve. Second.
Okay, a motion by Commissioner Gross, second by Commissioner Ebinger. Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. Motion carried. And we have minutes, two sets of minutes to approve, one from December 29th and the other one from January 5th, and we can do them all in one motion if there are no corrections.
I'll make a motion to approve both sets as presented.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Mojo, second by Commissioner Gross. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. Motion carried. Okay, we'll go into our 8:35 item, COVID-19 Public Health Director Kathy McKay. And Jamie's with, and we're going to hear all sorts of good things about vaccines and everything today. Okay. Good morning.
Good morning,
Kathy,
Mr. Chair and Commissioners. I passed the initial handout around, and you'll notice it's a little bit different. We have another individual providing some of the information. So you see, hopefully it's a graph, so hopefully it's easy to understand. We see the number of cumulative cases of Clay County in the first column, and then Minnesota, and then we see North Dakota and Cass County. So the cumulative cases of 6,432 in Clay County, and then in Minnesota, it's 447,392. Our active cases are around 130. And in Minnesota, 12,346. And then those out of isolation, so the cumulative cases, and then the 6,222 out of isolation out of those cumulative cases. In Clay County, we have an additional 2 deaths from the last time we reported, so we have now, unfortunately, 80 deaths. So, so our active cases are pretty close to what we're seeing. And in Minnesota, excuse me, 429,325 out of isolation, and their cumulative deaths in Minnesota, 5,721.
Kathy, I got a question on the cumulative active cases, 130. What is that figure? People that are in the hospital or?
Those are the active cases that we would be following that are still actively having the virus. So we're following those cases, those that are in isolation. So you see the total number of cases we had cumulatively. Those that were out of isolation are those that they typically will report as recovered. And so these 130 is what is currently the cases that we're following that are active cases.
There could be a lot more that have tested positive, huh?
There could. This number changes pretty regularly, almost daily.
Okay.
So did that answer your question, Commissioner Gross?
Thank you, Kathy.
Okay.
Thorough.
And then we have the cumulative hospitalizations of Minnesota residents, so 267, that's a cumulative number. And then in Clay County, 267. In Minnesota, it's 23,185. And then the numbers that were cumulative for ICU admissions, so 73 out of Clay County and 4,850 throughout Minnesota.
That's during the entire time. That's
Correct.
what I mean by
That is correct. And then we have a column of people with getting at least 1 dose of the vaccine. So we've added that column. Currently in Clay County, 1,291 individuals have received at least 1 dose. 185 have completed the series. So those are individuals that have received their first and second dose. In Minnesota, 194,000 462 have received at least one dose of the vaccine, and 38,025 have completed the series. So those would be the ones that, of course, that received the 2 doses. Now, in Minnesota, we've had 407,575 vaccines shipped from the federal government to Minnesota, 109,100 to long-term care facilities. So far, 516,675 have been shipped to Minnesota for disbursement. They initially promised 626,925, so we haven't received the full amount that they promised, but we have 516. And those are broken down. 19% of that was Moderna. That's the vaccine that public health is providing. That's the frozen vaccine. 309,000 of that, 309,075 is the Pfizer. And Pfizer is that ultra cold, so that went to healthcare facilities, most of that. So 60% of that vaccination that was shipped was Pfizer, 19% was Moderna, and then, 21% went to the long-term care through the, much of that, like in our county, that was the federal pharmaceutical, they signed on as a provider, so they provide the vaccine to our long-term care and assisted living.
So Kathy, so you mentioned the number 516,675 delivered to Minnesota. And again, I'm looking at the people who have received 1 dose is at 194. Are we still that far behind
Well, this,
in Minnesota for?
yeah, and this number will change. We'll see more of that today, the changes in numbers, but at this reporting time, that was all that was, all the individuals that received 1 dose. We do know that the pharmacy federal program that's providing to long-term care and assisted living, we do know that they still have doses to get out. For the first phase 1 group, they have not gotten all of their doses out. We don't know the exact numbers of those, but even as we've had some of our staff call our long-term care, we have a couple of facilities that are scheduled. It's just going to be a couple weeks before they get those doses. So it's, there's some delay in that, but there's also the delay in getting that vaccine to us as well. So we should hopefully see these numbers rise. I can tell you in Clay County, all of the doses we received have been distributed.
Good.
So we do a weekly distribution. We don't hold on to the vaccine. I want to make that very clear. We get the vaccine out. We get it shipped 1 week and we get it out by the next. So we don't hold on to doses. So all of ours is out. We're hoping to get a bit more this week, so.
Okay,
Go
sorry.
ahead, Frank.
If you ship out all your doses every week, the people that need their 2nd dose, is there available vaccine for them then?
The Minnesota Department of Health is stating they're going to give us the 2nd doses, particularly for Moderna, which is the vaccine we're using right now. So they will be giving us 2nd doses. In fact, we have something on the docket that we have 100 doses that we will be using for 2nd doses. That's our first shipment of the 2nd doses. So we can't use that for the 1st doses. They've had it allocated that we'll use that for 2nd doses.
Well, it looks like you'll need 1,291.
Correct. And they will continue to ship that. They've assured us that they will be shipping our 2nd doses. They know how many we've provided for 1st doses because it's all recorded within 24 hours, and on our, the Minnesota has a reporting system and it goes into a immunization registry. So all of that is recorded. They have the accurate information about what we've provided, and then they have assured us that they'll ship our 2nd doses.
Thank you.
Kathy, I've received notice from my healthcare provider to get on a list. And there's a form, you go to the Sanford site and get lined up. Now, my understanding is that Sanford is not distributing vaccine on the Minnesota side, that There are hospitals that are doing the vaccine, and now the center they're going to open up are in North Dakota. Are Minnesotans who are going to Sanford or to a North Dakota-based hospital, is that allotment coming out of North Dakota, or is Minnesota obligated to supply them, or do you have any idea how they work that?
You know, Commissioner Ebinger, the allotment that, like Sanford and Essentia received, those doses that they've provided, I'm sure they have quite a number of individuals that live in Minnesota but work in their facilities. Those individuals would be vaccinated. It would be recorded under the North Dakota allotment. There wouldn't be any Minnesota vaccine that's shipped over to them. And Jamie, do you know about the individuals that need to sign up? You probably know about that one. Just the general population?
So Sanford and Essentia sent emails to people or a My Chart message basically saying if they have a North Dakota provider, they will contact them. The Minnesota or North Dakota, the coalition meeting, the FM coalition meeting last week that I was not listening to, but was understood that they did plan to vaccinate Minnesota people if they have a provider on the North Dakota side. On the Minnesota side, we haven't had that discussion yet for vaccinating at the clinic level.
Okay, thank you. It's one of those things is a moving target then.
That's correct.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, well, thank you.
So then I can finish up the data. On the second page, it's hospitalizations and ICU hospitalization. So that's generally across Minnesota. And of course, if Clay County residents were in a Minnesota hospital or in intensive care, we have the numbers there. So you can see the graph shows the number of folks, 23,113 that had hospitalizations based on COVID, and 4,836 that were in intensive care in some place in the hospitals in Minnesota. So those, if there was any Clay County residents that were in Minnesota hospitals, those are included in here. We don't have a breakdown of those. And then the third page, you can see the Clay County cases reported per week. So it gives you weekly, kind of the graphs showing the cases. And, you know, as we see the real surge or the uptick, as we call it, in November, you see the number of cases that have risen. So the graph kind of depicts what our cases look like week to week. Hopefully that is a better explanation than the other numbers that change pretty regularly. So at least it kind of depicts the numbers of cases up through the 10th. And then the other graph at the back is the deaths reported per week. So we had a large number of deaths at the beginning of our pandemic. And then we saw, of course, another increase in end of October, in November and December. So we're seeing numbers of deaths reported there. Period of time where there wasn't deaths. So hopefully those graphs, you can get a better picture of what that looks like.
I guess my only one thing that I'm missing here is the active cases by age groups that I had asked for, and it's no longer in your report.
We can certainly add that. Thank you. Yes, we will add the active cases.
I mean, I think it shows some good information, and it can give insight onto where we might have to target messages. So,
Sure, absolutely.
yes, Commissioner.
Kathy, I think that maybe we should respond just in this meeting to the article that was printed in the forum in regards to Clay County being the lowest in the state in terms of vaccinating folks. I want the public to know that your team is really doing an amazing job, and we have been in meetings since July in terms of planning for vaccine rollout, and I think that we are ready to vaccinate as many people as we can. The holdup seems to be the amount of vaccine that you're getting, and as you said, We don't currently have anything. We've given all the vaccines that we've received. And so I think the other piece that was missing from the statistic was that there are a large amount of people in Clay County that have been vaccinated in North Dakota counties, and those numbers aren't being reflected there. I think there is probably much more people that are receiving these first and or second doses than is being reported for whatever reason, but I think as a person on this board, I think it's important that this board takes a stand to advocate for more vaccinations allocated from either the federal government or the state. It is imperative that as one of the top 3 fastest growing metros in the state of Minnesota, we receive vaccinations that are reflective upon that population growth. And it's disappointing to me that there has been other priorities given in the state. I know that it's vital for as many people as possible to get it, but it needs to be equitable statewide, and it's not appearing so for whatever reason. So I'm hopeful that we can get more, but I have a lot of faith in your department to administer those as you get them.
Thank you, Commissioner Mojo. I wanted to mention, too, that our Minnesota Healthcare Coalition coordinator offered us some Pfizer vaccine. That's unusual because the Pfizer vaccine through the Minnesota Healthcare Coalition goes to the hospitals. But the fact that we don't have a hospital in Clay County, she'd offered to provide us vaccine. So I accepted that. We did have Josh from our department had early on reached out to see who has ultra cold storage when we were going back and forth about needing that. So an individual from one of the clinics here offered to store that for us in their ultra cold storage, which is very helpful because if not, that amount of vaccine would have to get out within 5 days. We don't have ultra cold storage in public health. And so we had just communications late last week with Healthcare Coalition coordinator and the clinic staff who volunteered to store that for us. And then they're willing to partner with us. So they can also, they have staff, they can provide vaccine out of that Pfizer amount. We're allowed, it's allocated to public health, but we're allowed to have any partners we deem available and can assist in getting that vaccine out as quickly as possible. So we're pretty excited about that partnership. We're going to reach out to the other clinic as well. So that's good news that we're getting quite a number of doses through Pfizer. And we anticipate late this week that they should receive that at the ultra cold storage. And then we'll work out a distribution plan with the staff. So we will have more doses than just the Moderna. So that's good news.
Kathy, I think Commissioner Ebinger wanted to follow up on comments from Commissioner Mojo. So.
Yeah, I was concerned after the article came out. And as is often the case, the headline is made to draw your eyes to the article, and it elaborates in the details that maybe it's not quite reflective of what the headline says. I am very happy with the response I got from public health and from you, Kathy. The efforts that are being made to immunize our people, we are ready to go full steam. The holdup is getting vaccine. The governor is frustrated. He's expressed his frustration. I think locally we are frustrated. Personal experience, I know people who have been immunized, in discussing this, have been immunized in North Dakota. My wife is a volunteer with hospice, and she was immunized in North Dakota. They have vaccine, and it's being used and delivered effectively. We are ready to deliver vaccine effectively. I'm comfortable with all the preparation that's been made. We just need to get the vaccine. And that is a problem that's, as we say in my old job, is above our pay grade. But anything the commission can do to help, we're here.
I just want to follow up on that as well. And I think the the issue appears to be, you know, the vaccines that we're getting, and we're getting in people's arms right away, which is what needs to be done. At the state level, I can't say the same thing is happening based on the numbers you presented us today, because I think it almost falls below 50%. And that's, to me, that's troubling, but I want to also, there must be a way that we can somehow monitor what Clay County is getting in terms of its share of Minnesota total vaccines. I think for a county, as Commissioner Mojo said, that's growing like we are, and we're giving proof that we're administrating that vaccine when we get it, that we should rank high in getting that, and any message that, as Commissioner Ebringer just said, that we can give as a commission to the Department of Health or to the governor to let them know how we're doing on this, we should be doing that, so. Okay. Continue on.
Okay, anything
Okay.
you have, Jamie?
I won't repeat a lot of what we already discussed related to vaccine, but I will point out that I did see on the Minnesota Department of Health website that, and the governor repeated yesterday several times, that there are 60,000 doses per week coming into Minnesota, and there's 5.6 million citizens in Minnesota, so that's just 1% of the supply needed. And so I think that was like, yes, that's what we're dealing with. In Clay County, as we've talked about, you know, we're on a weekly basis, we're communicating with the State Health Department that we are prepared and ready to administer vaccine, and we are asking for additional doses. And so that's what we're doing. We're actually trying to get it out the same week even, you know, depending on what time during the week to get that done. We are preparing our healthcare providers, and public health, our responsibility as healthcare providers. We're preparing them so that they're responding very quickly when we do send them an invite for one of our vaccine clinics. So they too are doing everything they can in order to make sure they're getting that vaccine and they're not on our next invite list the next time. And so basically, we have 2 clinics scheduled for this week. We talked a little bit about the doses. So far, we've administered 700 doses. We're expecting 400 of that first dose this week again. And then also, we are going to be getting some of our second doses. So they continue to tell us in Minnesota that we will give you second dose and that we need to hang on to those when we get them. But first dose will be administered immediately. Another thing that happened, we had a meeting yesterday with Minnesota Department of Health to discuss the governor's press conference yesterday, and shared some of the information with us on that. We had requested to be a pilot site. The governor did announce that there are pilot sites. There are 9 pilot sites in Minnesota to administer vaccine. And right now, there's a target population for that, but they are hoping that those will be mass dispensing sites in the future. We did request that. What we understood is that they were looking for storage capacity, and so we were not chosen in that case. But with the governor's announcement of the pilot sites that will open up for vaccine distribution starting this week on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. The Minnesota Department of Health will be the agency responsible for scheduling appointments, and also they'll do that online, and they'll have a phone center as well. So the pilot sites that were chosen, and those are, the closest one to us is Otter Tail County in Fergus Falls. There's one in Pennington County, Thief River. There's one in Stearns County, which is St. Cloud. And then Nicollet County, St. Louis County, Olmsted County, Lyon County, Hennepin, and Anoka. Those are the 9 sites that were chosen. With those sites, they will be serving the population identified by the governor, which is Minnesotans age 65 and over, the pre-K through grade 12 educators and school staff, and childcare workers. And the way the system will be set up is that because there are very little doses, and I believe it was 12,000 for all 9 of those sites that they had available, then the Minnesota Department of Education has been working with Minnesota Department of Health on the number of doses they will receive for each of their school districts or school districts that are chosen. I'm not even sure if they're all getting them. And so they will decide who would receive those doses within the school system. So that registration does not go through the Minnesota Department of Health initially, but once they receive that I will be getting the vaccine, then they would register also with the Minnesota Department of Health. Child care workers would be actually chosen randomly to receive the vaccine at those sites. So that's how they'll use those 12,000 doses across those 9 sites, and their hope is that they would have that as an opportunity for people to access. So what does that mean to us in Clay County? It means that if you are in that age group and you are contacted by or if you're pre-K through 12 or a child care provider and you're notified by your employer, then you can schedule a vaccine at the Fergus Falls site. You can choose the site, you can't sign up for more than one. For the 65 and over, you would have an opportunity to call in or register online for a vaccine if you choose not to wait till your provider contacts you in our community. In Clay County Public Health, we continue to do what we have been doing, which is our priority as healthcare providers in Phase 1A. We continue to work on that, and the pharmacy program continues to vaccinate our long-term care residents. All of our nursing home residents and staff that have requested vaccine have received it, and they are moving through our assisted livings right now. So that's pretty much, and the rest, and because of the shortage of vaccine, we need to continue to follow what we have, wear a mask, keep our distance, and stay home if we're sick. See some frustrated faces right now.
Sometimes it's best not to speak. I do want to bring up something that I asked both of you about quite some time ago, about research on those who have had COVID. And, you know, it was out there that it might be 90 days to 120 days. Just this morning, I was watching Good Morning America. And apparently now they've come up with some studies that is showing that it could be significantly longer. They did some tests from 12 weeks to 6 months. And they were showing that still after 6 months, there was enough, whatever that is that's in you that creates antibodies. So that might be some good news coming forward in terms of those who have had COVID already. So I don't know if you've heard any more on that, or.
You know, when I was at Vitalent, I asked about the convalescent plasma, and they have individuals that were positive in May to provide convalescent plasma. They still have antibodies.
From how long ago?
I was just there 2 weeks ago. So they told me so individuals that were positive in May are still donating the convalescent plasma. So that's a pretty good, that's beyond the 90 days. So that's the information they have. They initially were only getting one convalescent plasma donation per day, and now they're getting about 6 per day. So it'd be nice if it was more, but it has increased, so.
I saw a deal on the national news last night too, that there was a request for convalescent plasma from, through, you just said it.
Vitalent, or?
No.
That one was Red Cross, I think.
Red Cross.
Oh, Red Cross.
Red Cross, and they had a woman on there who had received it, and they basically said it saved her life, so.
Yeah.
Donate plasma.
Yep, donate plasma. It's great, and the more people
If you can.
donate, if you can, and even if it's beyond 90 days, it's worth getting checked, because you may still have antibodies that they can still use your plasma for, so.
One other thing, I know in your report, you talked about the fact that we were passed over because of availability or storage and freezers that we had. We tried in July and since then to get those freezers, and for whatever reason, they were unavailable. Kathy, you worked really hard to make sure that we could get those so that when we did get a vaccine, it would be available, and they were nowhere to be found. So I am thankful that there are partners in the community that are willing to store things for us. I think that's a really important piece, but I think so often we hear about being thankful for our frontline workers and our nurses and those in the hospital and long-term care settings. And I am eternally grateful for the work that they do in our community. I know this whole board is that, but the piece that sometimes goes unsaid is the toll that it takes on your own department. And Kathy, if we would have told you a year ago that you had to come to us every week for almost a whole year, I think you probably would have had a heart attack, and that might be an understatement. So I appreciate the fact that not only do you come here every week, but you get the information out as soon as you know it, and it's a changing story all the time. And, unfortunately, our frustrations sometimes gets passed on to you, so I'm sorry about that. But I want you to know sincerely that the work that you do in our community will forever be thankful for that. And it's been a long year, almost. It seems like a year, 8 months, whatever. But I know that there's a lot of stress that you experience, and I'm sorry for that, but I'm thankful for the work that you're doing.
Here in Clay County, we couldn't be prouder of our public health department.
Absolutely.
And
Thank you. And I will also say that we're all very proud of her as our leader as well. She keeps us laughing while we are going crazy working, so that says a lot too. And we actually had our first incident management team meeting the last week of January, talking about February and some of the celebrations that were going on, and yeah, it's been a long time.
well, hold your heads up high. You've done a lot of good things.
Sorry, it's lack of sleep. I think.
Okay, we've all experienced that. Okay, well, anything else today? Thank you both for your report.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, our next item, Kathy, you get to stay right there. Okay. We were going to talk about the discussion on food, pool, and lodging licensing. Kent is going to come up as well. Thank you. Okay, these numbers aren't in these numbers. Okay, very good, okay. Okay, so obviously we've had some discussion before regarding potential relief to our Clay County businesses that had paid license fees. And I know that the both of you went before the health board. I'm assuming you're here to give a report on that meeting, and then we can take the conversation from there, so.
Yes, we were both on the Community Health Board meeting, and Commissioner Gross chaired that meeting. So that included commissioners from Otter Tail, Becker, Clay, and Wilkin. I think Becker maybe didn't have a commissioner there.
Wilkin did, and Otter Tail did.
And Wilkin and Otter Tail. So the program is a community health board program, so the fees were set by the community health board. So we wanted to talk through the ability for some small business relief for food, pool, and lodging. And so we were discussing reducing or refunding license fees that we provide for that Becker County is their food, pool, and lodging program is provided by the state. So just Clay, Wilkin, and Otter Tail are a local delegated agreement. So the discussion ensued, and Commissioner Gross, maybe, was it Otter Tail Commissioner that made a,
Yeah, Wayne Johnson said that they already have their own plan as far as how they're gonna proceed, and I don't think the fees had very much to do with their plan there. Everybody's just going to apply for it, and they're gonna distribute the funds accordingly to their application.
so the vote was unanimous that, that Otter Tail was going to do their own. I think Wilkin as well, that they were not going to necessarily directly impact the licensing fees, but they were still providing their own process for their small business relief. So that vote was not to take fees out of the license fee amounts, but they were still going to provide some business relief.
Right, as long as it wasn't gonna affect the fees, we didn't put any restrictions on any of the counties. Each county has to come up with their own plan. If they wanted to take license fees into consideration, that's up to them, but it won't affect the county health, the community health board.
And we previously had the 2021 fees that you, I think our small business relief group, I think we sent that fee distribution for the 2021, and this new page is simply just a quick amount from our 2020 fees that we collected.
Yeah, I think what we've been talking about, and we've been talking about it in our most recent business relief, is a reimbursement. It's a play on words, if you want to call it that, but it's dealing with the 2020 license fees that they would have, licensing fees they would have paid. We're still talking about that in our committee meeting. We've had some discussions about how that could work, and we're trying to, there was some discussion about, was it $250 or whatever, but it still might be a significant token regardless. But we also want to make sure that it's not a lot of extra difficult work on the part of our auditor's office to do some of those things. And we've asked Mark Sloan to, as we go through this final process on who's going to see the relief on the business side, that we might be able to just create another line item on there that would go back and, I think the recommendation, and Commissioner Mozo, the number we've been talking about is reimbursing half a year's worth of these fees to, and if you look at the document that was handed out, you gave this to all the commissioners, right? I think we'd probably be looking at, if you look at that total of $118,058, that would probably be the number we'd be looking at doing the 50% on. So you'd be roughly 65,000, Steve, is that right?
Sorry, Mr. Chair, yes, between the food pool and lodging, that 118,000 would be about $59,029.25 for half a year.
And so, yeah, so, and again, we'll be bringing something forward from our group on that one, and understanding full well that the community, this isn't going to impact the Community Health Board's budget or those dollars. So we're also then trying to figure out our source on how we would fund that. We did have $31,000, I believe, and something from the most recent money from the state that was supposed to be used for administration. We thought we could probably tap into that piece of it to help pay that. And then, as Commissioner Mozo said, I think the county should have a little skin in the game for our businesses too. So we'll come up with a recommendation probably here in the next week or two regarding that. And in addition to that, there was the other page that had $11,000 that were paid for actual, those are actual liquor license fees, correct? By businesses outside of any municipality.
That is correct, Mr. Chair.
And so we're also looking at probably doing the same thing for those businesses. a lot of the businesses that have been within municipalities, the municipalities have chosen to reimburse that on their own, but these rural businesses that are outside of the city limits have not had that ability, and that goes directly to us. So we're probably looking at half of that 11,000 too for that, so, coming up, so. And that can be some significant help to these businesses as well, so. That's where we're at. Commissioner Mojo, if you want to.
Mr. Chair, was the purpose of having this on was to have our board make a motion? I noticed in the document there's an option on that.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Moser, we did have some discussions in PIC of if the board felt comfortable making that motion, that we would certainly accept that.
Well, I certainly feel like there are a couple pieces that we should probably smooth out within the CARES Act committee. My concern is that that delays it a little bit to getting the dollars to some of these businesses that really need it. If you've been paying attention in the news or the paper, there's seems to be another business every week or two that you see going under. I understand that this probably won't be a saving grace to a business that really is in trouble, but it certainly would help with payroll. I think that we're not confused on maybe where the board is in terms of how much time we want to reimburse the fees, but maybe what pot of money it would be coming out of. I think that I've said before, I wanted a lot of it to come out of reserves. I know there's a dollar amount that we were allocated for administration. Applications are still coming in until this week for the business relief piece. I think as of last night, we had 67 businesses that had applied. Maybe it would be appropriate if this board agreed on a set amount of time to make the motion to reimburse the fees up to 6 months and to allow the CARES Act committee to determine what pot of money that would come out of. It's just a suggestion.
I like that suggestion, but I just want to clarify that I think I think it would be difficult for us to send that money separately right now to those businesses. I think, if we could get the word out that what our intentions are, I think that would be helpful as well. But I still think that from the standpoint of dispersing the funds, I'd like to see just one total disbursement for these 67-plus businesses, because all of those will have paid those fees as well. So why not just incorporate it on that, so you're not doubling the work of our auditor's office? And that's going to take a little bit of time. We're still targeting sometime in February to get this done, so.
Well, and maybe a follow-up. I guess that was the reason I suggested doing it before, is because I know as soon as that closes, our auditor's office is going to have a significant amount of work to get, get the pay squared away. And I was under the understanding that this would be a second check, that because of constraints on when we do have to get audited on that fund, they're two separate checks, correct?
I would assume that Lori would probably like to have it in two different runs, but I haven't been able to talk to her on that for sure.
I would have assumed differently myself. Commissioner Gross.
Being in the rural area, as far as the Barnesville's, the Hall is, the Dillwood, Linden, who do they apply to? The businesses there apply to the county?
They all apply on the county website.
Even though they pay the fees to the cities?
Oh, no.
As far as fees, you're taking that into consideration, but they don't have to apply to the city also, do they?
No, not on these fee reimbursements, no. Any food beverage fees, they go to the county, not to the cities.
All right, because it's the county that's refunding, well,
Right.
not the fees, but they're taking that into consideration.
That's right.
Okay.
But they will more than likely they will also be the same category of people who will be receiving the other funding that we're distributing from the state dollars on the most recent CARES money.
I just didn't know how close they're looking at fees, I mean, just because you pay a $200, $250 fee, doesn't mean that's how much your profits are affected. If you're gonna give half that back, they say how much their profits, I mean, some people have probably more profit loss than others, so.
Yeah, that's, we'll have that discussion on the other one, but that profit thing got to be a real difficult thing to determine based on a questionnaire. So right now, we're kind of leaning against having that be a criteria. And we're getting more information on that, Frank, so we gotta be patient. Our group will get to you as soon as we can on it, but.
Well, thank you. No,
But again, I think from my standpoint, we know that we're gonna be distributing some relief dollars, that we receive through the state to our businesses in Clay County. And, we're gonna have a spreadsheet that they're working on, that those dollars are gonna go in. And I personally thought that it would be easier than to just have another column on that spreadsheet that would incorporate the fee reimbursement. And then, you go over and give a grand total on there, but on the check itself, it could show two lines, one being for this one for this purpose, and the second line for the fee reimbursement, or whatever we call that, to make it, to satisfy the community health board. But I just think we're talking about the same money going to the same group, so we might as well do it on one and save Lori a lot of work. But anyway,
And Mr. Chair and Commissioners, I believe Kent would have to compile all of the individual establishment fees, so through their software program, so they would have each establishment and the specific fees that they had paid in the 2020. Is that correct, Kent?
Yep. Also, if I could respond to Commissioner Gross, I'm wondering if possibly your thoughts a bit ago here, maybe with the liquor and alcohol licensing, we as the agency are licensing these places, but there is also a separate alcohol license to be purchased. And I wonder if maybe you were thinking about, for example, say the city of Morehead bars and restaurants that have a liquor license, they pay money to the city of Morehead for that license in addition to our food license.
that's right.
So I just wondered if maybe that's what you had been mentioning earlier, so.
Well, I was just wondering, because I guess that's what I'm looking at, Morehead's already refunding some of it, so I didn't know, are we giving a double refund, or?
No, Commissioner Gross, we're not giving any refund to the alcohol license that is done, like I said earlier, by each municipality. That's separate. What we're talking about, though, is the half a dozen rural businesses that pay their liquor license directly to the county. Then we're gonna be doing the same thing for them, what Morehead, for example, did with their businesses.
Okay.
If Dilworth has bars within their community, or Barnesville has bars within their community, and they collected liquor licenses, then it's up to them if they want to give relief to those,
Very good. Thank you.
because we don't receive those funds. So, okay. All right, are we good? Okay,
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Mojo.
Just to throw this out there, I'm just going to go for it, and if it doesn't pass, it doesn't pass. But I think the reason I want to do this is because I don't think there's any question on this board that we are wanting to provide some sort of relief in the licensure of what we're talking about in these fees. I will, to show these businesses that we are committed to this, make a motion to refund, or however we want to wordsmith it, 6 months' worth, 50% of the fees that were presented, so the rural liquor license fees as well as the other food and beverage fees.
Okay, we have a motion.
I will second that
We
motion.
have a motion by Commissioner Mojo and second by Commissioner Kaylee. Any further discussion?
And then just to follow up, this board needs to approve those payments when it does go out. We get bills every Tuesday morning that we approve, so this board will need to approve that. This allows Kent you the time to get all the information together to send over to the auditor's office, but also gives the CARES Act committee, who is continuing to meet on a biweekly schedule the opportunity to figure out how we will pay for those reimbursements. And it will certainly come back to this board so that you know what the plan is. But I think our businesses deserve us knowing about this since I think it's been a month since we've talked about it.
And again, those numbers, based on what we have right now, we'd be looking at somewhere in the area of $70,000, roughly. Commissioner Gross?
That wouldn't involve a second application with them. That would be.
No, they will not. This we know who all paid it, and we will just go off of that.
Okay.
That would not be part of any application. Do we have any further discussion on the motion?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
And Commissioners, now we are talking, just so I make sure, that's the 2020.
The 2020.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that we need to
Yes,
make that clear in your
that's
motion.
reflected
Okay.
in my motion.
Okay.
And Jenna's second as well.
So Kent, you'll have a little bit of work if this passes. Okay, any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, the same. Motion carried. So I think, Kent, we can work, Kathy will go through you and Kent, and we'll have to create maybe that spreadsheet on by business, and then we can tie that in with what we're doing on the CARES side. Hopefully make Lori's work easier. And we've got our state auditors listening in here, and they're probably wondering what the heck we're doing, but
Don't worry, Bob.
I'm getting a grin from them, so. All right, so with that, thank you, Kathy and
Thank you.
Kent.
Thanks.
Well, speaking of auditors, our next item is review of the state audit report. And we have with us today, we have Bob Johnson and Tammy Swanson with the State Auditor's Office. Good morning.
Good morning. As mentioned, Tammy Swanson is with me today. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go through some of the financial information, and then I'll turn it over to Tammy to go through the schedule of findings. Before I get started, I just wanted to back up for a second and note that I watched the final meeting in 2020, and I thought you guys did a really nice job of recognizing the commissioners that have been on the board in the past. And then I'd also like to welcome the two new commissioners that are on the board now. And I just kind of thought that you guys did a really good job at doing that. And I've also kind of noticed that you did a very good job of recognizing Clay County staff at that meeting. I'd like to kind of further that with all the things that happened last year with COVID, the extension on single audit. Obviously, the audit process is a little bit later this year. So generally, I'm done presenting by now. But I also wanted to recognize the county staff. They were very helpful. The process has changed a lot when we had to do a lot of things remotely. And with those process changes, it required them to make more documents available electronically, which requires scanning and those types of things. So I just wanted to make sure that you guys knew that we really did appreciate all the assistance in the audit. With that, I'm going to get started with some of the financial information. With two new board members, do the board members know the difference between fund level financial reporting and government-wide? Should I summarize that a little bit, or just?
I think that would be helpful, Bob.
Okay. Governmental accounting is a little bit different. We have two different levels of reporting. For governmental funds, at the fund level, the information is reported on what's called modified accrual basis. The modified accrual basis includes some short-term accruals. Basically, it includes your payables for the first couple of months worth of the years, or the year, and the receivables for the first couple of months during the year. It does not include things like capital assets or debt, because those are all long-term type things. When you have transactions between funds, at year end, you may have some due between funds and transfers between funds that, those are all reflected at the fund level. When you get to the government-wide level, it's the entity as a whole. And it's on a full accrual basis, so some of the adjustments we make to go from fund level to government-wide is we take out all those inter-fund transaction type things, the transfers and the due between funds, those types of things that are reported at the fund level. And then we'll also bring in the long-term debt, and we bring in capital assets, and depreciate those capital assets over the life of the assets. So when you look at the financial statements, the first two exhibits are on the government-wide level. And after that, once you move into exhibit 3 and beyond, it's fund level financial reporting. At the fund level, I should point out that you do have enterprise and internal service funds, which are also reported on the full accrual basis. So they're reported similar to the government-wide, only they're on a fund-by-fund basis. So the information I'm going to cover today is financial information, and I've got approximately 6 handouts. The first one I'm going to take a lot of time on because it's got a lot of information. We'll start out with fund level financials. At December 31st, 2019, Clay County's net position was $127,564,000. That's up about 8.8% from the previous year, or up $10,367,000. Part of that was net investment in capital assets. That increased to $2,499,000 due to an increase in governmental activities of $2,061,000 and an increase in business type activities of $438,000. The governmental activities increased due to the net increase in capital assets of $1,984,000, plus a decrease in debt related to those capital assets of $76,000. The business type activities increased due to net increase in capital assets of $4,677,000, less an increase in debt of $4,239,000. Your restricted net position increased $1,679,000. That was due to an increase in governmental activities of $1,420,000 and an increase in business type activities of $258,000. Governmental activities increased due to an increase in general government of $59,000, an increase in public safety of $63,000, an increase in conservation and natural resources of about $103,000, an increase in debt service of $1,288,000, and that was offset by a decrease in highways and streets of $94,000. The business type increased to $258,409 due to an increase in closure and post-closure costs of $162,000 and an increase in capital projects of $107,000. Offset by a decrease in health of about $12,000. Your unrestricted increased $6,188,000. That was due to an increase in governmental activities of $2,459,000 and an increase in business type activities of $3,728,000. Any questions on the government-wide? I know I went through that kind of fast. If not, I'm going to move on. The next part of that handout, if you move down the handout, we'll talk a little bit about fund level financial information. I'll first go through cash balances, and then I'll go through our recommendations for unrestricted fund balance. The cash balance of the general fund at December 31st, 2019 was $10,768,000. The state auditor recommends that the general fund have enough cash to sustain about 6 months of operation. In your case, the cash in the general fund would cover about 5.5 months. The road and bridge fund had a cash balance of $3,209,000. That would cover you about 3.5 months. Although it's the general fund that we have a recommendation for because The general fund does rely more heavily on the tax revenue coming in. Your social service fund had a cash balance of $7,561,000, and that would cover about 4.1 months worth of the expenditures.
Say, Bob, can I just interrupt just for 1 second for our new commissioners? On that 5.5, you don't recognize our internal service fund.
No, that's not included in the general fund cash. If I were to combine the internal service fund with the general fund, you'd have a cash balance of $13,225, and that would be about 6.35 months worth of expenditures. So with the two combined, yes, you're in excess of our recommended balance for the general fund.
I think it was just important for our new commissioners to know that that's not recognized in the audit by the state auditor's office. It is money that we would have available for us if we needed it, but.
That is correct, yep. Okay. I'll cover the fund balances here. The state auditor enough unrestricted fund balance to sustain about 5 months worth of expenditures or fall somewhere between 35 to 50% of operating revenues. Overall, the general fund and special revenue funds unrestricted fund balance was $21,452,000. That would cover you for about 4.1 months worth of expenditures and 33% of your operating revenues. So it's right, pretty much on the borderline of our recommendations. Breaking it down by fund, which is our recommendation is the general fund and all special revenue funds combined, but I kind of like to provide the fund level, just so you've got a feeling for each of your individual funds. The general fund had an unrestricted fund balance of $8,387,000. That would cover about 4.3 months of operation and is 31% of your operating revenues. Your road and bridge fund had unrestricted fund balance of $8,889,000. That would cover about 5.3 months worth of expenditures and is 35% of your operating revenues. And the social service fund had an unrestricted fund balance of $8,058,000. That would cover 4.4 months of expenditures and is 36% of your operating revenues. Now, of those three funds, the total fund balance of the general fund is $12,016,000. That's up about $1,960,000 previous year. The road and bridge fund had a total fund balance of $6,003,000. That's up about $1,067,000 from the previous year. And the social service fund total fund balance is $8,058,000, and that's up about $628,000 from the previous year. Any questions before I move on?
Any questions? Go ahead, Bob.
I'm going to move on. I'm covering this very fast. It's some graphs that I've found that most of my counties like to receive the graphs. I won't go into a lot of detail on them, but what they are is they provide like 5 months worth of history, just so you can see where you've been and kind of where you're heading. The first graph is, it's labeled handout number 2. So if you're following along, it just shows the revenue types. And the only things that I point out here is that your revenues are basically, I mean, you've got several different types of revenues, but the large revenues are your taxes and intergovernmental revenues. And taxes and intergovernmental revenues have been steadily going up over the 5-month period. If you look at the graph on the taxes, you'll notice in 2018 it kind of jumped more than normal. That's when you started kicking in your sales tax for your expansion projects. And then I'm going to move on to handout number 3. This is your expenditures. Again, it shows you the history of where you've been. I've got the numbers and the graphs there. Your main expenditures obviously are general government, public safety, highways and streets, and human services. For 2017 and 18, capital outlay kind of kicked in there. That was, again, those major building projects that you had. And then the last couple of graphs here, I'm gonna, just briefly go through. Handout number 4 is the fund balances of the general fund.
Bob, before you do that, handout number 3, can I ask a question?
Sure, I can back up.
Conservation and natural resources, 2019 was 2.5 million versus previous years of 600 and some thousand. What's that?
I might have to look that up and get back to you.
I'm just trying to remember what
Yeah.
large transaction would have fallen into that category that,
Tammy, do you recall right off the top of your head?
Not right off the top. I'd have to look.
Kevin, can I get back to you on that?
sure,
Okay.
thank you.
I'd like to look that up just so that I give you the correct answer, obviously. And I'll just call you on your cell if that's okay,
That's fine.
after the meeting.
That's fine.
Okay.
Yep.
I'll get back to you on that. Okay. Handout number 4, again, is just and your fund balance has bounced around a little bit, but overall it's gone up over the 5-year period. If you look at the difference between 2019 and 2015, your unrestricted has gone up about 2,997,000, and your total fund balance has gone up about 3,103,000. And I should just point out, these are just 2 points in time that I'm picking for these numbers. So over a 5-year period, your total has gone up a little over $3 million. Handout number 5 is the Road and Bridge Fund. Again, the fund balance sort of bounced around over that 5-year period. But overall, your unrestricted is up about 1,601,000 from what it was in 2015. And your total fund balance is up about 1,431,000 from what it was back in 2015. And then handout number 6 is your Human Service Fund. Again, the balances went down in 2016. They've kind of gradually gone up in 17, 18, and 19. And total fund balance and unrestricted fund balance, because there's no restrictions in that fund, are the same. The increase over the 5-year period is about $242,000. So with that, unless there's any additional questions on financial information, I'm going to turn it over to Tammy Swanson.
Say, Bob, before you do that, in regards to that question that I asked, could you give your response, send your response to Steve, our administrator, and then he can forward that
Sure.
to all of us? Then you don't have to call me individually.
Okay, I'll do that. I've got another board meeting right after this board meeting, so
That's okay,
I'll send it right after I get done with that one.
no problem, thank you.
Okay?
This is Tammy, and my camera on my computer is not working. I wanted to see if the board members can see me.
We did earlier, Tammy, but now it's not showing.
Yeah, and I'm not quite sure how to fix that, so my apologies.
That's okay.
And I want to reiterate what Bob said about working with Clay County and the staff, because we are very appreciative of all the preparedness and assistance that we've been given. Responsiveness has been great, so we appreciate all that. I'm going to go over the schedule of findings and question costs, and just a brief explanation of this. These are the findings that we consider significant enough to be written and included with your annual audit report. The first page is it's called a summary of auditor results. And since the county has a single audit, the information on this page goes to a federal single audit clearinghouse. So they receive all of this information, and it's good information. It gives some good details, or it's a good summary of the results of your audit report. First of all, the type of report that we issued on the financial statements was an unmodified, which is the clean report. That's the one you want. As far as internal controls over financial reporting, we did not identify any material weaknesses, and we did have a significant deficiency identified. There was no non-compliance material to the financial statements noted. As far as your federal awards, internal controls over major programs, we had one material weakness identified and no significant deficiencies reported. We issued an unmodified opinion on the major federal programs, with the exception of the Medicaid cluster, which we qualified the opinion for. The major federal programs that we tested were the TANF cluster, foster care, and the Medicaid cluster. And Clay County did not qualify as a low-risk auditee this year, which just meant we had to test 40% of your federal dollars. And on the next page, the first finding that we had relates to segregation of duties. And I know it's been around for several years. In the criteria, we say the adequate segregation of duties is a key internal control in preventing and detecting errors or irregularities. And this finding is mainly related to the smaller fee offices. And due to the limited number of personnel within those offices, segregation of accounting duties necessary to ensure adequate internal accounting control is not possible. And like I said, it mainly has to do with the smaller fee offices and the controls over the cash and the collections before bringing it to the auditor treasurer's office. Inadequate segregation of duties could adversely affect the county's ability to detect misstatements in a timely period by employees and during their normal duties. And our recommendation is that mainly that the county's officials and management be mindful and aware of the risks of limited staffing in the departments, and consider implementing oversight procedures to ensure that internal control policies and procedures are being followed. The next finding under the Roman numeral 3 relates to the federal award programs and the eligibility testing that we did on the medical assistance program. The Minnesota DHS maintains the computer systems, Maxis and METS, that are used by the county to support the eligibility determination process. And in the case files we reviewed for eligibility, not all the documentation was available to support participant eligibility in Maxis. I'm not going to go into the detail of each case. We found a total of 7 instances where the documentation in the case file didn't support the participant eligibility. The lack of documentation verification of information input into Maxis increases the risk that a program participant could receive benefits when they're not eligible. In these cases, we're not aware of any of these where they were ineligible. It's just that the documentation in the case files didn't match the Maxis or the Maxis system. Do you have any questions so far? Okay.
Go ahead.
And as far as the recommendation on the eligibility comment, we would just recommend that look at implementing additional procedures to provide that all the documentation needed is included in the case files, and consider providing additional training to the personnel involved in that process. The next finding is under legal compliance. It's on the electronic funds transfer policy. When we looked at this, the board has established a county investment policy including a section on electronic funds transfers referencing Minnesota statutes. But the policy didn't include policy controls required by statute. However, we do, when the corrective action plan was given to us, Lori stated that a revised policy had gone to the board in October, so that's great that this one has already been resolved. And the next item is publication of board minutes. Pursuant to Minnesota statutes, within 30 days of each meeting, the county should have the official proceedings of its sessions or a summary published in a qualified newspaper of general circulation in the county. We reviewed the affidavits of publication relating to the publishing of a summary of the board minutes for 2019 and found that not all of the summaries were published in the county's official newspaper within the 30-day requirement. And of the 8 published summaries that we reviewed, those were for October through December of 19. 2 of the December summaries weren't published. So the effect is that they're just a non-compliance with Minnesota statutes. And our recommendation is that the county publish its summaries of the board minutes in compliance with statutes. And the last item in here is that there were 2 items that were resolved from last year. There was a prior period adjustment the previous year, and there were none in the 19 audit. And the Department of Human Services, DHS 2556 reporting, there was an issue in 18, and that was resolved in 19. Any questions?
Yeah, I had one question on that published reporting. Other than saying that it's a rule that you're supposed to have it done within 30 days, what's the reason that it has to be done in 30 days? Do you know that, or are you just going by, it's a rule? Is there a reason for it?
It's actually a statutory requirement.
I realize that, but why do we need it? I know it needs to be done because it's a statutory requirement. So if you're a month and a half, what's the problem with it not being reported within 30 days? Other than it didn't follow statutory requirements.
Yeah, that's exactly what the problem was, is it didn't follow statutory requirements.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
I think you'll notice in this, and I think for the public that might be listening in, it's important to recognize that some of these findings, for one thing, are typical in every county within the state of Minnesota, especially when it comes to the smaller departments and the tracking of the small amounts of cash. The investment to have staff do that would be far exceed its reasonable responsibility, but we certainly do keep in mind that there is some at-risk stuff there, and our staff, I think, does a good job in monitoring that. Going to the one on the Maxis issue, I believe that issue came up before too, and there had been some changes in the way the records in Maxis works, and I think there was a delay in us being able to, through our staff, to be able to go back and compare all those records that are, Bob, I think it was you that mentioned, or somebody mentioned in regards to the different programs that were being used. It's an important finding, and one that I know we spent a couple of separate meetings talking about this. But anyway, in terms of, for all of our citizens and every one of these findings, we concur with the findings, as you will see in the report, and we continue to work on making the recommended corrections as needed. There's my commentary on that. Okay, Bob, anything else? Are you are you through? Do we have questions from our board members?
I think we're good to go if you guys are.
Well, again, thank you, Bob and Tammy. I think you, Joan, I think you work well together with our auditors department and our staff, and we're always pleased to get a good unmodified opinion in regards to our audit. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we need to approve this?
I don't know that there's action required on this. It's more of a.
Yeah.
Okay, so with that, we'll move into our 9:15 item here at 9:45. So I'm not doing very well with our time today. County Relief Program. Steve, we've already talked about a lot of this today, but.
We have, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Commissioners. Good morning. Just want to provide a real brief update. After this board approved the business relief application and guideline process, our application went live last Tuesday at noon. It'll remain open until the 24th at 11:59. And just to kind of give a quick update, while we certainly, the committee understands and this board certainly understands and recognizes that there's a great need throughout all businesses. This business relief program focuses on those businesses that were directly affected by Executive Order 20-99, specifically bars, restaurants, gyms, theaters, and event centers. As Commissioner Mojo mentioned, halfway through, we have about 65 applications that have submitted thus far, and we're currently in the review process. We have a representative from both the county and the city who will be going over an application just to verify the information as part of that application process, with the goal that'll expedite the money going out once we receive hit the deadline.
Just to clarify that you said the city, and it's.
Excuse me.
All the cities in Clay County are represented on that review panel.
Correct. Once the review process is completed, businesses will be notified either way through email whether they received the funding or whether they were a successful applicant. And they will be receiving emails from covid.relief@claycountyminnesota.gov or non-reply@seamlessdocs.com. So they're aware that if you're seeing that in your email, it's not spam, or also maybe checking within your junk files. Again, payments will be determined by the number of applications and needs shown, and businesses will be required to show or complete a W-9 form prior to receiving those funds. So with that, I would yield for any questions.
Any questions of the board? I think we're going to have to, we haven't got another meeting scheduled of our group. I think we're going to probably have to look at early next week right after things are closed. Commissioner Mojo has problems with Monday.
I have some availability afternoon on Monday, but just a couple hours, but I certainly feel like we should, even if it's a Teams connect. I don't know if you want to maybe meet briefly Friday too.
Friday.
Okay, that's fine.
I can't Friday. But,
Anyway, that's.
All right.
yeah, we'll
schedule something for Monday afternoon then.
Yeah, perfect. Okay. All right. Thank you. If there's nothing further, we'll move on. Okay, request approval to continue the Family First Coronavirus Response Act. Darren. This was brought forward through our PIC committee, right?
Yes, correct. Thank you for having me today. This was brought forward to the PIC committee because, for a little history for the new commissioners, back in April, they had a Family First Coronavirus Response Act. And what it did was it gave 80 hours of sick leave for anybody that had the six conditions or met the 6 conditions for Corona. And during that time between April 1st and December 31st, we had 233 people submit forms to take advantage of that program. Some were out because they worked from home, so it was just normal work hours if they were able to work from home. Some were not able to work from home, and this is when that 80 hours of sick leave would kick in. So the program ended on December 31st of 2020, and there was no renewal of that program at this point. Some of the counties decided to renew that program for a certain amount of time. Other counties did not continue the program. Some counties allowed employees to go in the hole with 80 hours of sick leave and then, gradually work it back up. And so I brought this to the PIC committee to see how we wanted to proceed, because obviously the coronavirus is not gone on December 31st. The amount of cases have certainly decreased, at least from my perspective and the employees, whereas back in September, October, November timeframe, we were having 30 or 40 or sometimes 60 employees impacted by coronavirus. Right now, I'm probably juggling about 10 to 12 that are out or working from home because of the coronavirus. So the PIC committee recommended that the program be continued at county expense until, I think we said March 31st. So that would give us 3 months, and hopefully by that time, we will see less and less of the coronavirus and less of an impact on our employees. I told people that they should continue to submit their form even though the program was stopped on December 31st, so that if the board decided to continue the program, we could always go back and retro that sick leave to them.
I might want to add, Darren, so when you said at county expense, from the time that this thing moved forward, April 1st to December 31st, it was also at county expense. The only difference there is we were able to, with the first go-around of CARES dollars, we were able to reimburse ourselves for those costs using the CARES dollars. There's no guarantee that we're going to be able to do that between January and March. However, I know that there's going to be billions more dollars through the federal stuff that's being passed down to the state of Minnesota again. So I'm assuming something's going to come down for additional relief for counties. So just so we can,
Correct.
The board to keep that in mind, that
Yep.
this is something that we did before with the intent of having to cover those costs. So.
Correct.
I guess with that in mind, I make a motion that we continue the program till March 31st, 2021.
We have a motion from Commissioner Gross.
Second.
We have a second by Commissioner Ebinger. Any further discussion? Commissioner Module?
Sure, thank you. I just have a question on how this, I think in the past, we've dealt with how this issue kind of compounds and how we will deal with it in the future. How, do we have policy on if an employee's reaching that maxed out? And, I'm sure you talked about that in PIC, but I'm just curious about that.
Yes, that's a good point, and I did put that in my notes, but I didn't talk about it. The intent is that if you've already used your 80 hours in 2020, you would not be given another 80 hours. But if you did not use your complete 80 hours in 2020, you would be able to use up to 80 hours. So people that didn't use it at all would be able to use 80 hours. Some people that were only out for, 24 hours because they came back negative and they went back to work, they could use up to 80 hours as well. So it's not a granting of another 80 hours if you have already used those 80 hours. And thank you for pointing that out. I had it in my notes, but I forgot to touch on that.
I think that all has to be COVID related though, too, right?
Pardon me?
And the 80 hours, if you're going to take 80 hours of sick leave, that has to be COVID related.
Correct. It has to meet one of the 6 conditions of the Response Act.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. Motion carried. Thank you, Darren.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, item number 7, request approval to fill position with victim witness office. Brian.
Commissioners, hello. This is the budgeted position we talked about during budget process for the new commissioners. The victim services within my office currently is one full-time position with Michelle Olsenowski, the full-time director, and then 2 part-time positions. They're down what was previously another full-time position in total. During budget process, I came forward and asked for turning the one part-time position into a full-time position, which is what this position is. So it's a budgeted position. I'm asking to get it filled at this time. I don't know any other explanation in regard to it, but that is the position I'm asking to get filled from part-time up to full-time.
All right.
And it is budgeted.
Questions?
I'll make a motion to approve. Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Mojo, a second by Commissioner Ebbinger. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, the same sign. Motion carried. You're good to go, Brian.
Thank you.
Okay, our next item is request authorization to submit RFQ for the Resource Recovery Campus Construction Project, which is the transfer station.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We're trying to do what the PCA wants us to do, so that's what we call it. I'm coming before you today for a request for qualification to issue the request for a qualification for a contract with the guy or the gal or the company that's actually going to do the construction of the facility. One of the things that I should point out is that we're doing exactly the same process that you all did during the LEC and the jail process. We're using the same, essentially the same contract, the same process, essentially the same thing, so this should look pretty familiar to you. I should point out that we did check with the attorney to make sure that it was correct with form and substance, and he signed off on it. He actually gave me a compliment. I want to thank you for that. I didn't do a lot of the work, but I appreciate the compliment nonetheless. So with that, I just wanted to walk through very, very quickly some of the key times of the process that we're looking at. 22nd of January, we're actually going to advertise the RFQ. February 12th, the qualifications are going to be due. And then the 23rd, we'll be coming back to you again and recommending who we think should be the contractor. The interviews will actually be done by Commissioner Mojo will be on the committee, Commissioner Campbell will be on the committee, and then we have 3 folks from the Solid Waste Advisory Committee that will also be on the committee as well. After the recommendation, the interviewees to the board, we'll actually conduct the interviews the 3rd of March. And March 9th, hopefully the board will approve the contractor. March 30th, the CMR, well, that's actually a construction manager at risk. The contract will be approved. And then from the 30th of March to the 20th of April, the contractor will submit a guaranteed maximum price. And that's the price that they'll pay. That's the maximum amount that they'll pay. And that's something that we'll be looking forward to. And then hopefully if there's snow off the ground, frost out of the ground, construction will begin May 1st. And construction period will be anywhere from a year to 15 months. And so hopefully the construction will be complete August 1st, 2022. The RFQ will be sent out to various building exchanges throughout the state. So we should get, and again, those are going to be exactly the same folks that were sent to the LEC and the jail. So we got a really good number of folks that were submitted at that point in time. So we hope to have the same thing at that time as well. The request for qualification is pretty pretty basic. We're just looking for scope of service. We're looking for the people's experience, not only on these types of projects, but also with projects within Clay County. Obviously, we're looking at the people that they have, the expertise that they have. It's pretty straightforward. So with that, I will stand for any questions you all may have. And if there are none, I'd like to have you approve the issue of this as well.
So one of the critical components of this, in order for these applicants to put forward a proposal to us, is to understand the item that you have, which is the January 21st date, which is the final drawings. It seems to me when we had a presentation done on our two other facilities, we had plans for them to comment on, so I'm assuming those will be available.
Mr. Chairman, that's correct. The plans are going to be available the 21st of January. I should point out that those plans are not necessarily final. We're looking for the contractor to provide any kind of value-added engineering if there's a better mousetrap or a better way to do things, then that's what we're looking for during that process. So when we say a final drawings, it's final drawings from our consultant, or in the case of the jail or the LEC, it'd be the architect.
And if I can, just for a second, we had a building committee meeting here last week, and there's some other things that are in the works here, potentially in the works. The original plan called for, we have the 20-acre site, but there was 3 acres that were going to be reserved for the city of Morehead to potentially put up some buildings. There might be some things in the works where that could change, but we still will have room. We're having that thing set on that property in a way where there would be room for additional buildings like that on that property. Is that correct?
Mr. Chairman, that's correct.
Okay, because I think that's important to keep that in mind. There might be some things coming forward that could be really beneficial for Clay County that we're still in the works talking about, but.
Mr. Chairman, I should point out that, during the initial drawings, we worked very, very closely with Steve Moore, who is no longer with the city. I think it's a big loss, not only for the city, but for the project as well. So they're certainly aware of what we're planning on doing.
All right, well, we have a request to go out for proposals here.
Mr. Chair, I know that there's been a significant amount of legwork that has happened to get this proposal to this board, and I want to thank not only Commissioner Campbell, but certainly Commissioner Whalen for their work in planning. This is certainly taken a lot of time, a lot of trips down to St. Paul to advocate for funding, so I'm excited to be at this point. I'm also excited to serve in that capacity on that board, so I will make a motion to approve the authorization of the RFP.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Moses, second by Commissioner Keeley. Any further discussion? We're getting closer.
Well, that's a step at a time, what can I say?
All right, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. Thank you, Kirk.
One other thing, Mr. Chairman, at the last meeting, there was a question about the building being separated, and you and I had quite a conversation going on. I want to congratulate you. For the first time in, I think, 35 years, you proved me wrong. And you were right. I did not have a chance to talk. Well, I'm sorry. I'm apologizing. I thought that we had talked to you, but obviously we erred in our ways. And after we talked to Matt, we realized that. And so I just, congratulations on making history. But again, I'm sorry as well.
You know what? There's yeah. Let's keep moving forward.
Well, I'm sure that there'll be another opportunity to make some more history with me. So
Potentially, yes.
Absolutely. Thank you much.
Thank you. Okay. All right. It's nice to know you're right once in a while. Okay. Oh, my goodness. Next item, we have county-owned property sale. Is this the same thing? Good morning, Matt.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, and good morning, Commissioners. Just want to give you an update on the sale of 2 county-owned properties. Just for maybe Commissioner Ebinger and Commissioner Cayley, give them a little background on this. In October, the board had approved the sale of these 2 county-owned properties. One is a quarter section in Elkton Township, and it's been in the county's hands since the 40s. The other being a property in Riverton Township. Originally, this was acquired to be a site for a future landfill. The west half of that property is very, very wet and not conducive to a landfill, so we had split that property off from that parent parcel, and we're looking to sell that. So my update today is we had an auction scheduled for next Tuesday, the 26th, and unfortunately discovered an encumbrance on the Elkton Township parcel that would prevent its sale at this time. And I guess in an overabundance of caution, talking with the county attorney, Brian Melton, and myself, and with Steve Larson, decided to pull the other property too, just to make sure we can do extra due diligence on that, to make sure that the title is clean, and hopefully we can get that back on the auction block this year. And then in regards to the Elkton Township piece, I think that Brian and I will have to do some more work and see if there's any solutions for being able to get that encumbrance removed, if that's an option. So that's kind of where we're at with that. And we can continue to do work on that, and then happy to come back to the board and provide you an update on what we can do with those 2 properties.
Mr. Chair. Thank you. Commissioner Gross and I serve on the county-owned property committee, and we've really discussed for several years how to get this land back in the hand of the public, because if we don't have a use for it, I'm not sure why we're currently in possession of it. But I want to thank you for being cautious. I would hate for us to have gone forward with the land sale only to find out that there was a mistake. That would be a nuisance to not only us, but whoever would ultimately purchase that. And so I want the public to know that we're continuing to make sure that we're evaluating these land uses and making sure that if we don't need it, it certainly makes more sense for the public to own it. So I'm hopeful that we can find a solution. I know that there are some tricky regulations with some of those sometimes, so I'm hopeful that we can continue to move forward in the sale of these properties.
And Commissioner Mojo and Mr. Chair, all commissioners, I think that's probably one of the main things that Matt and I directly talked about. I mean, knowing this is it's a fairly substantial cost that somebody would bid on, and we would not want to have somebody that would bid on it, ultimately purchase this piece of land, maybe even begin to build on it, and then find out there is an encumbrance on it, and then all it would entail, to potentially undo that, or somebody's out money. Specifically the Elkton Township piece, there's a lot of tie-ups that we ultimately found out that really it's an issue involving the state, and whether we would ultimately even own it if and when we don't use it any further for gravel, and it would return back to the state. I mean, so those are some of the things we have to work through now. And in regard to the Riverton Township piece, once we saw that on the Elkton Township piece, and we were looking at the warranty deed on that other piece, that did have some encumbrances previously. Up through 2012, it had encumbrances to allow for gravel that had been previously mined to still be taken off all the way through 2012. And so knowing that was on there, knowing what we had on the other piece that goes all the way back to 1945, we thought it's best to look, and I think just what Matt said, I think some of our due diligence that we need to do, maybe even come back to the board, either whether that's asking for a full title search and/or I think there's some other possible options that could be done to just look to make sure there are no other encumbrances on the Riverton piece. I think we probably can get that one back on in a maybe a fair shortened time. I think the Elkton one will definitely be more complicated.
Well, I appreciate the county-owned properties committee's work on that and your findings before it was sold rather than after it was auctioned. But I'm looking forward to maybe hearing some recommendations between, Brian, between you and Matt, your department, on how we can correct those issues to do exactly what Commissioner Mojo said and get this back into the public's hands.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I'm sorry that we caught it only a week before the auction, but
It's
better that than after.
That's
That's for sure. So, yeah.
Okay, well, I guess we're interested in not letting this thing sit either, so if we can keep moving forward. And if we can't, we can't, but if we can, let's find a way. Okay.
All right.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
There's no action that is required of us, right?
Not at this time, no.
Okay. Very good. Okay, then we'll move on to, do we have our highway department here? Assuming hopefully they're inside the door. There they are. Okay. Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning. It's your turn.
All right. Our first item.
You have 2 items, right?
Correct. First item is for approval of a diagonal parking agreement, and this is in conjunction with our Holly project. It's a state aid requirement. So what the city is looking at doing is right in front of their library, they're pulling the boulevard in a little bit, and they're actually putting some diagonal parking on there. And these are pretty standard forms. We've done these in the city of Glendon and city of Barnesville. In order to actual diagonally park, you have to have a really wide road. So in the past, we've done parallel parking agreements that are almost identical, but just showing that you had either parallel parking or no parking, because there was an area in front of the school, I think that Glendon opted to have no parking. So similar to our last few forms that we've done, follows the state aid rules, and being that they were able to push the parking quite inside the boulevard, it allowed them enough room to, according to the standards, to fit that in there. So City of Holly put this little agreement together that follows the state aid template, and I guess we would recommend approval, and we can submit this with our plan sheets. We're getting extremely close to having a full set of plans, and Justin's been working with More Engineering on the last few details as well as the state aid approvals on this one. So probably going to be, like I said, we got approval to advertise this one, but the letting date is still within a few days of actually setting it. It's probably going to be towards the end of February, though, by the time we advertise for a month.
And you said this has been advertised. I mean, I've seen it in the paper. Hasn't it been advertised already?
Not yet. No, not the Holly one.
Okay.
Okay. You're looking for a request to approve the diagonal parking feature of the project, is that correct?
So moved.
We have a motion to approve.
Second.
We have a second by Commissioner Ebinger. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chair, as somebody who's been to that Holly Library many, many times, I think this is a great project. I'm excited to see more parking in that area. Thank you for working on that.
All right, that's good. Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. Your next item is the approval of 4 motor graders.
Right.
Spending money.
So these current 4 machines are out of warranty. I just want to give you a little information on a couple things here this morning. When I first started, we were buying motor graders. We would keep them for 13 years, and that would be over half the life they would be out of warranty. And when you did run into major repairs, and I'll let Justin talk a little bit more about that, what that involves, but the standard when I very first started 20 years ago is to keep these machines 13 years or so. And then about 10 years ago, they started having like a 5-year, 5,000-hour warranty, and then we would look to rotate them at that time. And a lot of that had to do with the high price or the good trade values on used equipment, extremely unprecedented well trades. And then from what I've been kind of hearing, but due to the higher quality oils that we're using, as well as the reliability of the machines, now kind of a standard motor grader warranty is 7 years, 7,000 hours, and that's what we've been doing. In working with Lori on our replacement schedule, she puts the dollars in there on a 13-year average, but with the high salvage value that we get at 7 years, that it does work out. And we can kind of go through the spreadsheet and you can kind of see that it's actually dialed in really good. I think on 4 machines and on $1.4 million, we're within $5,000 of kind of accuracy on our internal service fund, which I would like to talk about just so that everyone kind of maybe has a little understanding of the internal service fund, and maybe you already do, but every department I think that has equipment, and specifically for our department, is we've got an internal service fund for replacement of equipment. It's almost like a savings account, so to speak. So each individual piece of equipment that's listed on there has a sub-allocation, and I think our annual budgeted amount for our internal service fund is a little over $1 million per year. And then that each little chunk of that, depending on a schedule that a county auditor puts together, goes into each equipment. So then there's a life that's put together, and the auditors kind of have a library that goes down that they kind of get from the auditors for its trucks, pickups, and different equipment that has a life, and then we kind of agree and put that in there. So after X amount of years, we get enough dollars in there for replacement. So on this one here, as you can see, we typically go to 2 vendors. We go to the John Deere dealership in town and the Cat dealership. Those are the 2 preferred machines that we like and that we feel are meeting our needs. And what we'd like to do is get approval today for 3 of the John Deeres. They're all-wheel drive motor graders. And maybe that's another thing to talk about is prior to the fire that we had in Barnesville that burnt down one of our shops in 2011, we typically had all tandem drive machines or rear-wheel drive machines, even though our guys were kind of obviously would like the all-wheel drive machines. But after the fire, we got, based on that we needed equipment ASAP, and it's hard to get these things immediately, but we did get an all-wheel drive machine at that time, and it kind of started the movement, and now all 11 of our machines are all-wheel driver. That way, in the wintertime, they can lock in the front wheel, and it just helps keep, even in the summertime, they say they use that all-wheel sometimes when they're blading gravel, and it makes a huge difference. But like I said, we'd like to get approval for 3 of the John Deeres and then 1 of the Cat machines. We're within $5,000 of our internal service budget, which is really good. Another thing I'll just have Justin speak on is he talked with our shop staff a little bit about what happens or what could happen financially if you keep machine outside of warranty.
Yeah, so I talked to Clayton this morning, who is our shop mechanic, and one of the issues that we kind of see before the warranty goes out is transmissions have been going out, and the cost to replace a transmission is right around $22,000. And that's something that we can't do in-house. A few other problems that he noted that kind of happen after the warranty is up is there's been emission problems in electronics, both of which we cannot service those in-house. And each motor grader has at least 7 different electronic control modules that seem to kind of go bad. And those are all items that we can't diagnose a problem or fix them.
It seems like the dealers are, within that first 7 years, being that that's their warranty period, things are pretty bulletproof in that first 7 years. And outside of that, I think is when you start seeing more, just like your standard pickup truck has a 3-year, 36,000, and they must feel the warranty period there is pretty good. And outside of that, you're kind of on your own. So one thing to note too is I think we did have a couple of transmission issues inside of the warranty period recently. So, I mean, even these big machines that you pay hundreds of thousands of dollars for, they do break down, and I guess if you can get it, if it happens inside a warranty period, it's just a bonus for the owners.
We did have 2 John Deere transmissions go out.
Right.
Within the warranty.
Question.
Just a comment that these breakdowns don't typically happen on a 70-degree summer day. So
Right.
I think it's important that we have machines that are reliable, because they're really, our residents in rural Clay County are really counting on that. My only question was in terms of, I know how valuable it is for our mechanics to understand the equipment and then have the parts on hand. I'm concerned with going all John Deere and then having the cat. Is that something that you're confident won't be an issue?
So we currently have one cat in the north part of so we have 2 cats and 9 John Deeres. And I guess what we really like is the fact it gives us a little flavor for both machines. That way, when we are working on replacements and we have 2 different salesmen coming in and, one saying how good his is and how good the other one is, and I feel it gives us a couple things. We know how reliable both machines are. We know how, fuel is another really big selling point for them. So we know if one's really good on fuel or really bad on fuel. Cost of parts is another really big selling part. So I know a lot of times they say, oh, our parts, their parts are way more than ours, and that. So I guess I feel like it gives us a lot of comparison on those issues for reliability as well as resale. That's another huge selling point. They always, one of the things they could say is their machine gets a lot better market warranty after 7 years, and the longer I've been doing this, the more I see they really come together. The parts they may be a little different. Maybe the John Deeres are a little more expensive. The cats are probably a little bit more fuel economic. At least that's what we kind of see. As far as trade-in values, you can look on there and see where the trades are. They're pretty comparable. So it's not a huge difference, but I feel like it's just enough where it gives us a little flavor of both, or we have a little bit of knowledge in both. And as far as mechanic ability, parts in our tool room and that sort of thing, that's not too much of an issue at all.
Good, thank you.
I think the important thing to realize here, and what makes us be able to do this after 7 years instead of 13, there's 2 pieces to it. There's the good trade-in value, and then the lack of warranty. That lack of warranty can, we had a couple machines where we let those warranties lapse, and we paid significantly for it. So I think it's a smart financial way to go on this in terms of a cheaper alternative than hanging on. And typically, you would like to use them for their life, but then you have a lot more problems financially with that. So.
And the downtime is absolutely
Right.
like on a day like today, you would hate to have machines down where you can't get out.
You can easily spend well over 10 to 20,000 more a year per machine when the warranty's up. Okay, well, we have a request, and this was brought before our Highway Tracking Committee, and our committee definitely recommended approval of this.
We did have a discussion on that, and we approved it of the committee, and I'll make a motion to approve it.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Gross.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Ebbinger. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. Motion carried. Dave, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Justin? All right, that brings us to committee reports, and I'm going to go way to my right today and start with Commissioner Gross. You ready for a report?
Okay, on Tuesday, we started out with Highway Tracking Committee meeting. Some of the items have already been taken care of here, but we also discussed having the township meeting. We're looking at February sometime to have that township meeting. Next item we discussed was the 11th Street underpass with Morehead. They're asking for some more money to us fund that, and we're looking to have a meeting with Morehead in the near future. The graders we have already discussed, reconstruction process at Hawley we've discussed here at the meeting. We had some discussion on the diversion, about reviewing some technical proposals, and we're going to redo some railroad crossings, and which will be done this summer, I think. And also, we're going to be looking at the county pit royalty that we're trying to get together with the townships, and I think that will be discussed when we have that meeting in February. Later that day, we had the PIC meeting where we've already discussed at the meeting today about what the plans were as far as continuing that sick leave program. We looked at the security guard over the Family Service Center. We're going to continue that program for till, I think, June 30th, as of right now. And we're also at quite a bit of discussion on administrative position for the new government service center that will be going in, whether we'll put another administrative position in there. Wednesday had the Wildrise Watershed Board meeting. A lot of talk about eminent domain. They're working on that Gooseberry project up there, and DNR owns some of that land, so if there's eminent domain, there's a lot of discussion on who takes over as far as an eminent domain, who moves ahead with the project. One watershed, one program was approved. Either other was pretty much routine stuff. Friday, we had a building improvement committee meeting. There, we were talking about some land swap proposal with the city of Morehead. We talked about our bonding bill that's coming up here in the future, what all to include in that. Also talked about the signage over the new government building. And then we talked about including new building committee members on the committee, whether, since Georgia retired, whether we replace her, but since Joe took over both positions, we decided to keep the committee where it's at right now. That was my report.
Thank you. Commissioner Marshall.
Thank you. Last week after board, I had a discussion with our solid waste director on the information that we had today. Since I'm a new member on that board, wanted to get me up to speed on that, so I had that. On Tuesday afternoon, I had a meeting with Extension regional staff in regards to the Clay County staffing plan that we are currently experiencing. There was a resignation in that office earlier or late into 2020, and they have not filled that position. So just a conversation to make sure that we're continuing to address where the greatest needs areas in Clay County are for staffing. I've directed them to have a discussion with the PIC committee. They're hoping to advertise that position in the next few weeks. There is some savings there because they did not hire an interim, so that will be something carried over. So look forward to the conversation that you will have there. I had the Cass Clay Food Systems meeting on Wednesday, our first meeting of the year. We had a jurisdictional spotlight from the city of Fargo, an update on what the Great Plains Food Bank is doing in the pandemic time to get food to folks, so I appreciate that they're doing that. And then we had discussion on our food partners strategic planning that we talked about opportunities that we're aware of that Cass Clay Food Partners could work with regional and local planning. I did note my appreciation that MetroCog and the food partners will be addressed in our comp plan that we will be talking about shortly, and announce that the first Friday's event will be virtual on February 5th. On Thursday, I attended the State of the Cities virtual meeting. I really appreciate the fact that is virtual, because I think it opens up the conversation to folks that maybe wouldn't have seen that otherwise. Dilworth Mayor Chad Olson really did a nice shout out to the partnership between Clay County and the citizens, or the cities, in relief planning, so I appreciate that. And as you know, there's a lot of growth happening in the FM area, so it was interesting to hear that, but Clay County was represented well in that panel. That morning, I also attended the, let's see if I can find that agenda. The Lakes and Prairies Clay Wilkin Homeless Advisory Committee. Good updates on the grants that have been awarded for housing relief because of COVID. We've talked about that several times. There was a second round of grant funding that they were able to secure in the amount of $450,000. And the first round was $800,000, give or take. So that was huge, but that because there was a demonstrated need, they were also able to tap into that. So once they exhaust the first round of grant funding, they will be able to move forward on that. There was an update on housing support and talked about the CARES prevention project update that they have going on, and that carries into the landlord risk mitigation fund. Lots of adjectives, but also lots of good work for people. That day, I also attended the CARES Act committee meeting. Good updates in terms of that application that is now live, working through the priority list in terms of funding. And, you know, I think the most important part out of that is we want to get the funds to those who really need it. We did, as Commissioner Cayley and I had received an email from daycare providers in Clay County. I did bring that point up. Unfortunately, because they weren't directly affected with the governor's executive order, they won't be included in that. But I think it's important for us all to note that as we reach out to our legislative representatives, that's a point that we need to continue to advocate for. Unfortunately, they haven't been included specifically in those, but there definitely is demonstrated need.
Commissioner Mojo, can I just piggyback on just that for right now? Within our, and I know Commissioner Cayley, you've had some contact too regarding that issue, and through our conversations with all of our cities, and one of the things that Mayor Judd even brought up is some of these things we need to be careful that we don't water them down, but we still should be looking at additional resources, and he brought up the fact that he's now on the board of the West Central Initiative. So we're looking for other ways to continue to try to find additional funding where we could give some relief to some of these other areas that may have some subsidiary impacts to the 2099. They weren't directly impacted by having to be closed, but we certainly understand that there's some other businesses that still had some issues. And so we continue to work on that, and we do believe that we're going to probably get some additional funding from the state with this latest federal go-around. So it's not done, but we needed to be careful there, and I just wanted to point that out. So, yeah.
I think we addressed the other discussion point in terms of fees earlier, so that concludes that piece. I attended the Clay County Soil and Water District meeting until my internet router crashed on Thursday. 4 meetings in one day, I think my router said, done. Anyways, attended that. They had board elections. There's a new board member on that. They welcomed him. They had really good reports on all of the things that they're continuing to do even with COVID. They're staying quite active. The tree orders were received in people's mailboxes this last week as well. The tree order forms are also on the website if anyone wants to order trees. And then they have a policy meeting for the MOA for the Buffalo Red Watershed One plan that's been set for January 27th. And good updates from Bob from NRCS, but I guess since my internet cut out, Commissioner Cayley was there as well, so she can report on that. Last week, I had conversations with citizens that had reached out to me in terms of some watershed concerns, wild rice watershed concerns. I did forward their concerns on to the two members, both that are on that. Dwayne Erickson we've appointed, so he is working on addressing those. And then KFGO had reached out to me in terms of responding to citizens' concerns from the DMV. I'd worked with a couple citizens that, for whatever reason, had experienced wait times from 3.5 to 4.5 hours last week. That is unacceptable in my point of view. The one piece that was really important to note is that they said our staff really was patient and helpful, and I still think that we have some of the greatest staff out there, but for the public's perspective, want them to know that we're working on addressing some inefficiencies out there. As you know, last week we approved another staff member that will help to address some of those issues, and have opened, because of addressing some inefficiencies, some additional real ID appointment times. That seems to be kind of one of the pieces that's taking the most time. If you go to that appointment, make sure that you have all the documents that you need to. That is one way to avoid stretching it out. But under the best of circumstances, that appointment will still take you 45 minutes. So we are delegating some tasks that can be done when there's citizens that are not waiting. So thank you to the public for their patience. I think we're continuing to address that, and we'll go forward with that. Did you have a question?
Well, I guess on that waiting time at the motor vehicle, I spend about an hour in that mall twice a week, 2 times a week, and I've never really noticed that it's been, I mean, it's got to be a unique situation if that happened, because when I visit there, like I say, I go in there about twice a week, and I spend about an hour walking in the mall, and I just don't see that waiting time there, I'm not going to refute what you're saying, that there's someone waited 3.5 hours, but it's not a regular thing that's happening. Had to be a very unique situation. And I guess for people, Fridays, I think Friday seems to be a bad day. End of the month's a very bad day, so plan ahead a little bit, and it's just, don't wait till the last day of the month to get there.
I think the other point too is we were deliberate in when we moved DMV to the mall to make sure that we streamlined a process that can be cumbersome for people. And so, yes, there are some computer software issues that are out of our control, but I think it's important to make sure we address if we do see that any issues, and our staff has been overly positive about addressing that, and I really appreciate it. But once the news gets a hold of it, it's like you said with the vaccination, it only takes 1 or 2 people that have a long experience for it to reflect negatively, and we just want to address it before it gets out of control. I also had some calls on the vaccine rollout, so I appreciate Kathy McKay's response on that. She did send me a lengthy email about all the avenues in which they're trying to take to get more vaccine for Clay County residents. I appreciate that. Then last week, I also attended the Board of Appeal and Equalization training that our assessor Nancy Gunderson had sent out to us. That, even having been on this board for 6 years, is something that's important to continue to do that. So I think Commissioner Gross and I had done that. So if you've not, please do that. And then the last thing, I'm sorry, this is long. I was asked as chair of the AMC, State AMC Extension Committee, to help facilitate a discussion at the Coffee and Commissioners, or whatever they want to call it, Coffee and Conversation, AMC has it, next Monday. So I think those are available every Monday. They have a pretty good revolving door of panelists, and so just know that that's available if you have that time free. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Commissioner Binger.
I'll be briefer. Being the new guy, I had my first meeting.
Turn your mic on first, though.
Had my first meeting. We had a special meeting for the Diversion Board of Authority this morning at 8 o'clock. Commissioner Campbell and I virtually attended. It involved a change of land, basically a land swap with some payment on a couple of sites out there that are necessary for the project. It effectively stopped us from having to initiate eminent domain and dragging the process out. And the swap and the payments were authorized, and they're moving forward with that. Pretty much as it looks now, it looks like it's full steam ahead. So that's good news.
That concludes your report. Commissioner Kaler.
So on Wednesday, the 13th, I also attended the Cass Clay Food Partners meeting with Jenny, which she reported on. One thing I wanted to note is there was a presentation by Great Plains Food Bank, and Great Plains serves North Dakota, but also Clay County. And one of the things they said in that presentation was traditionally 90% of the food and meals that they distribute is from donations. But in 2020, that shifted to 100% of the food they distributed had to be purchased by the food bank. So there is a big need. And the number of meals that they distributed went up by 250,000. So we're seeing a lot of hunger. increasing in our communities. If you have any desire to donate towards something, Great Plains Food Bank might be a good one. Also on Wednesday the 13th, I attended the Morehead City Planning Commission meeting. They discussed the Prairie Parkway First Edition preliminary plot. Several citizens were heard at that meeting, but overall, it sounds like their concerns had been addressed and there were some changes made to the drawings that members of the community in that area were pleased with. And they're continuing to work on that project to make it something that everybody will be happy with going forward. So that was just the preliminary plot that was approved at that meeting. Then Thursday, the 14th, I attended the Clay Soil and Water Conservation District meeting, which Jenny already reported on. I don't have any additional notes on that other than there was a comment that there was some difficulty in acquiring the number of trees that they felt that were needed for this year, but there were a few more stones to flip over to get those, and there's a plan for not running into that problem again in the future. On Friday the 15th, I attended the Clay County ECI meeting. That's the Early Childhood Initiative. There was a lot of just general reports from agencies in the community and updates, and then a presentation from Dave Kemper from Friends of the Children. Friends of the Children is a professional mentorship program reaching out to the neediest kids in our community, and they take kids between the ages of 4 and 6 years old, and then that mentor stays with them through high school. And it's also a multi-generational approach. So they're working with mom and dad or whoever the guardians are in the household to try to address some of the needs and set goals. And it sounds like a fantastic program. So I'm glad that we have that in our area. It's fairly new. It just started last year, maybe the end of 2019, and they hope to grow that. They're also working very closely with the schools. So they're not only meeting kids outside of the schools, they're meeting them in the schools. Also at that meeting, some ideas were discussed about the celebration of Week of the Young Child in April. Traditionally, there's been a large event at the Morehead Center Mall where thousands of people come, and agencies that work with families with young children are able to do some education. Kids can get their eyes checked. There's all sorts of things that have gone on. But in this COVID world that we have, that's not a safe thing to do anymore. So the group is working on some ideas that we can still promote these agencies and all the wonderful resources we have in our community for families with young children, but to do so in a safe way. More on that as it develops. That concludes my report.
All right, thank you. Before I give my report, I did want to make note that Lori did respond to the question regarding the audit, the question that I raised regarding that soil and water, or why it was $2 million more than normal, and she said that was a ditch project. And that sometimes that can skew one year over another. It's based on when it's paid, so that was kind of the answer to that. Thank you, Lori. Okay, so last Tuesday, the 12th, we had a Highway Tracking Committee meeting in which Commissioner Gross has reported on. The only thing that I would add in regards to the bridge projects, one of them is on the landfill road, and I think there was some concern about when MnDOT does that they have proper detours in place. So there was some discussion about that. That same day, then we had a PIC meeting, and that's been fully discussed as well. We did talk about one other thing, and that was the contact tracers. Originally, we thought that we'd be out of funds for that as of 12/31. As it turns out, and that's a 3 or 4 county group amount of money. And there was still, I believe, like $70-some thousand left in that, and there was they were given the okay continue to use that money. So it appears we're going to be good on the contact tracer funding probably through the first quarter. I think wasn't that right, Steve? We're pretty close.
That's correct, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, okay. So that's good news that we can continue that. And of course, those numbers are dropping with the lower active cases. So hopefully that continues to go in that direction. That same day, then I had a landfill meeting that afternoon, and that was, or not a landfill, but it was dealing more with the project that we talked about this morning for the timeline for the building project. Thursday morning, the 14th, I attended the Lakes Country Service Cooperative meeting in Fergus Falls, and that continues to go well. We had a couple of new members join that the first of the year, and not a whole lot new to report there other than that's actually a board that I was elected to serve on but as a member of Clay County. It's not a formal committee for per diem purposes, but it's good to be there, and it has a lot to do with down the road when dealing with our health insurance and that type of thing, because we get our health insurance, we work through that group. On the, then that same day, we had our CARES meeting, and that's been fully discussed. I don't need to go into that anymore. Friday morning, we had our building committee meeting, and Commissioner Gross gave a report on that, and I don't need to expand on that anymore. And then this morning, I also attended the Special Diversion Authority meeting that Commissioner Ebringer reported on regarding the land swaps, which were approved. I do want to, before we go to yours, Steve, I do want to make a request on the issue that we talked about with Kent this morning. If we can see if he can expedite that list for us, I would like to compare that with the applicants that we received. I'm assuming that they should tie together, and it might give us an indication of maybe who hasn't applied yet that should, so that if we have to, we can reach out to them before the deadline to get their application in. I would think that a lot of those same businesses should correlate with each other, so. That concludes my report. Steve, do you want to give your report, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On last Tuesday, I attended both highway tracking and PIC that's been addressed. I would note that in highway tracking that Dave's national conference that this board approved him to attend, he and Justin, has been canceled, or it's going to be held virtually, so he's working on trying to work with the airlines to at least get credit for his miles. I'm a little concerned this is the second year in a row it's happened, so I don't know if there'll be a period of forgiveness with the airlines, but he's going to continue to work on that. We had county management on Wednesday. Kathy provided an update on our projects. We heard, talked about the Resource Recovery Center and a little bit of what we heard this morning. Board presentations are going to be starting next week, where each department will be coming forward to give you kind of where they're at and where they're heading here in 2021. And then we talked a little bit about the impacts of security within the Family Service Center. That afternoon, we talked with Matt Jacobson in regards to the land auction item that we heard this morning. Also attended the Sheriff's Department staff meeting briefly. That afternoon, also, I met with Tim Dent. He's working with the Morehead Public Service on ensuring we get the cabling to the government center in time for our March opening. Late that afternoon, talked with Lori Johnson, and throughout last week had a number of conversations with Kathy McKay. Again, appreciate the board's comments. I know that I talked with Kathy every day this weekend because her staff were working, and unfortunately, I think in their foreseeable future, that's kind of what their weeks look like. And as probably why I saw a little emotion this morning that it's been a challenging year, and while we're very optimistic about what's ahead of us with vaccines, there's a great deal of work that's in their future. And so I appreciated all the kind words on Kathy and her staff's behalf. Thursday morning, I toured the DMV and looked at some different efficiencies. One of the things that they rolled out right away this morning is generally when we're not able to do any work prior to 8 o'clock because the state doesn't open up to allow access to their information. What we do have the ability to do is get those people processed that are waiting in the hallways to those windows right at 8 o'clock versus having employees come in and starting dealing with that line at 8 o'clock. And so this morning we had employees that were there earlier. When I came over here at 8:30, or excuse me, when I looked down at about 8:10, there was only one employee, or excuse me, one citizen waiting in their seat, none in the hallway. Everybody else was at the windows. And so hopefully that'll be one of the efficiencies that we can work on that will make that process a lot faster. On the 14th, I also met with a number of department heads, Dave Overwold, Kim Savage, Georgia, Joe Olson, Kirk Rosenberger. Also spoke with Barry Amundson from the forum on business relief questions and COVID funding. That afternoon, I met at the CARES meeting that's been addressed by Commissioner Campbell and Mojo. And after that, I did meet with Mark Sloan about some of the changes, discussions that we had during that meeting for our business relief program. On Friday, I met with Brian Milton on a series of different issues, and also the committee, building committee, which has been addressed. 10:30 this morning, we had our 11-month walkthrough warranty walkthrough on the correctional facility for Phase 2. It's hard to believe it's been a year already, but they're conducting that 11-month. We have warranty through the 12 months, and so we want to catch anything that's already not on the list to make sure that we get that taken care of. There's still time. We talked about last week, the registration for our 52nd annual intergovernmental retreat is going to be again on January 29th. Those pamphlets went out last week, and so I think we have up until next Thursday to sign up for that. Again, it'll be held virtually. And just
Are we all registered for that?
Yes, yep, we got you all registered. We did just touch on a few different things. Commissioner Mojo talked earlier about virtual coffee and engagement events. There is an event each Monday that at 10 a.m. Where there'll be a different presenter. But there's also Wednesdays where you have the opportunity to talk with the AMC President Rich Svay, and also Julie Ring will be there to talk with them and other commissioners. I also just wanted to touch base in regards to the comments that were made by Commissioner Mojo and Commissioner Campbell in regards to daycares. AMC is going to be hosting a workforce and childcare roundtable. And it looks like it's going to be something that they're going to provide throughout the year. And so they're going to be working in conjunction with the policy of Center for Rural Policy and Development and the University of Minnesota Extension. And so that might be another opportunity for us to do that. If you didn't receive the link from AMC, I can certainly get it to you. And then I think there's also going to be an opportunity, I think, statewide for county commissioner conversation, just to get together an hour at a time, just to kind of talk about some different things that you're seeing as commissioners in your community that may be different from the more specific events. And I believe Commissioner Eberger and Commissioner Cayley will be attending the new commissioner training this week. Commissioner Mojo touched on the Department, the Department of Revenue Board of Appeals and Equalization. If you'd like to participate in that and you've lost that link, please feel free to reach out to me. I did follow up with Bowser in regards to board action that we had in their request of our position, Clay County's position in redistricting the Wild Rice watershed. In addition to our response, Polk County did respond. They also felt that it was a decision that should be made by Bowser, not necessarily input from our counties. And we also received a response from Monoman County. Monoman County was, I guess, the county that requested the last redistribution back in 2006. Monoman County respectfully requested or would object to any change in the management areas, the distribution managers that would decrease Monoman's authority on membership within the district, and they based that on two reasons. One, they don't feel that the conditions have changed within the watershed that's led to a management change in 2006. And they also noted that back in 2006, Becker County did not object to Monoman County having two appointed managers at that point. So we have not had any response from Bowser yet, but just wanted to make you aware that we did reach out as Bowser had requested and shared the information. Just of note, our two representatives on the wild rice are up for reelection or finding a different manager in the event that they're not interested. So that concludes my report.
All right, thank you. Anything else for the good order? Lee, anything? Okay, we are adjourned.